Arthur Mendonza, sitting in his luxurious office, was not a man who accepted refusal. His voice carried the authority of someone who had always been in control. "Lucas, it's time for you to take real responsibility," he said, looking at his son as if expecting resistance. Lucas, accustomed to the easy life of the big city, leaned forward in his chair, uncomfortable with Arthur's serious tone. "Why exactly should I run a farm in the middle of nowhere?" he asked, trying to hide his disinterest. Arthur didn't answer directly. Instead, he handed Lucas an envelope with details about Dark Farm, a place shrouded in mystery and stories he avoided sharing. "There are secrets only you can uncover," Arthur stated, his gaze filled with hidden intent, "and you'll have to do it alone." The order seemed more like a sentence than an invitation. Lucas, even without knowing what awaited him, understood that refusing was not an option. As he left the office, Lucas carried the envelope as if it weighed more than it should. Something in Arthur's posture indicated this was more than just a family assignment. What secrets could be so important that my father would insist on them? The doubt remained in his mind. But the answer seemed to be miles away, on the farm where it all would begin. Lucas arrived at Dark Farm at dusk, the sky tinged with orange hues that soon gave way to an almost oppressive darkness. The property was vast, but it seemed forgotten by time. The main house, with its ancient and imposing architecture, showed signs of decay, while the surrounding fields were covered in a low-lying mist that gave the place an unsettling air. Lucas got out of the car, feeling the weight of being so far from everything he knew. "Is this where my father wants me to discover secrets?" he thought, frowning. At the door, Clara Montero was waiting for him. With a firm posture and a look that seemed to see beyond appearances, she extended her hand in greeting. "Welcome, Mr. Mendonza," she said professionally. Clara was everything Lucas hadn't expected. Young, but with a maturity that shone through in every movement. He sensed she knew more about the farm than she let on. "I hope your stay here is productive," Clara continued, unsmiling. Her neutrality was intriguing, as if she were hiding something beneath the surface. As Clara guided him through the main house, Lucas couldn't help but notice how meticulously maintained everything seemed, yet steeped in history. The paintings on the walls, the antique furniture, and even the distant sounds of animals in the barn created an atmosphere that seemed to hold secrets. But what caught his attention most was the way Clara avoided mentioning certain parts of the farm, as if there were invisible boundaries. Why does she seem so careful about what she says? Lucas wondered, beginning to feel that his stay there would be anything but peaceful. During his first days at Sombria Farm, Lucas tried to adapt to the routine, but the feeling of disconnection was inevitable. He was accustomed to the constant noise of the city, and the oppressive silence of the farm made him uneasy. The few employees who worked there greeted him respectfully, but avoided any prolonged conversation. Clara, always present, maintained a professional demeanor, but there was something in her demeanor that intrigued Lucas. Why does no one seem comfortable here? He wondered, as he observed his surroundings. One morning, while walking through the fields, Lucas tried to strike up a conversation with one of the workers. "How long have you been here?" he asked casually. The man, visibly uncomfortable, quickly replied, "Long enough to know that some things are best left alone." Lucas was confused by the answer, but he didn't get a chance to ask any more. The man simply walked away. It was as if the entire farm carried a secret that everyone knew, but no one dared mention. This only heightened his curiosity. That night, while he was dining alone in the main dining room, Clara approached to check on him. "Is there anything else I can do for you, Mr. Mendonza?" she asked, her tone ever professional. "Yes," Lucas replied without hesitation. "Why does everyone here seem to be hiding something?" Clara held his gaze for a few seconds before replying, with a tone that blended warning and mystery. "Because some truths don't need to be discovered, sir." But what truths could be so dangerous? Lucas wondered, feeling like he was just scratching the surface. One afternoon, while exploring the property, Lucas noticed something peculiar. On the west side of the farm, an old barn stood out, locked with sturdy padlocks and rusty chains. Unlike other structures on the farm, which appeared abandoned, this barn showed signs of recent maintenance. The wood was less weathered, and the ground around it was clean, as if someone visited regularly. Lucas approached, trying to see through the gap in the boards. but all he could detect was a faint metallic smell in the air. Why so much care about this place? Later, he confronted Clara about the barn. "Why is that place locked? What's in there?" he asked, trying to sound casual but not hiding his curiosity. Clara, for the first time, showed a slight unease. "It's a dangerous area, Mr. Mendoza. It's not safe to go in there. It used to be used to store old equipment, but now it's empty and unstable." The answer, though seemingly logical, sounded rehearsed. Lucas sensed something more. If it's empty, why is it still so protected? During the night, while Lucas was thinking about the barn, he heard a distant sound coming from that direction. It was low, almost like a metallic whisper, but enough to catch his attention. He got up, looking out the window, but the darkness of the farm seemed to swallow everything. Is Clara hiding something dangerous, or just something she doesn't want me to find out? The question now was not whether he should investigate, but when he would have the right opportunity. Determined to understand the mystery surrounding the dark farm, Lucas began exploring the main house more closely. One cold morning, while rummaging through the office, which looked like it hadn't been used in years, he found a locked drawer. After a few minutes of trying to open it, he found a small set of keys on a nearby shelf. When the drawer finally gave way, Lucas found a stack of old papers, but what caught his eye was a letter, yellowed with age, with Arthur Mendoza's name written at the top. The letter, written in elegant handwriting, contained fragmented sentences that seemed more like a riddle than a clear message. It spoke of something called the Secret of Solace, and mentioned a tragic event that had occurred on the farm years ago. The words "no one must know" were underlined, as if in warning. As he read, Lucas felt a shiver run down his spine. Why had his father never mentioned this letter? And, more importantly, why was it hidden? With every line, he sensed that the mystery of the barn and the secret mentioned were intertwined. Lucas tucked the letter into his pocket, knowing he needed to confront Clara about what he'd found. But before he left the office, a sentence in the letter caught his eye again. "Shadows guard what light should never reveal." He set out, determined to find answers, but he couldn't help but wonder, what exactly are these shadows and why do they need to be stored? Intrigued by the recent discoveries, Lucas began to observe more closely the few workers who still resided at Dark Farm. They were reserved, but there was something in their eyes that suggested they knew more than they were letting on. Determined to extract information, Lucas struck up casual conversations during breaks, feigning interest in the farm's daily life. At first, the workers limited themselves to brief answers, but over time, they began to reveal fragments of old stories. One afternoon, while talking with one of the older men named Elias, Lucas overheard something that made him uneasy. "Years ago, this farm was full of people," Elias began, staring into the distance as if reliving painful memories. "But some people just disappeared, and no one ever dared to ask why." Lucas tried to elicit more details, but Elias abruptly ended the conversation, muttering, "It's best not to disturb what's buried." The answer, though vague, only fueled Lucas's curiosity. That night, Lucas reflected on the fragments of information he had gathered. The disappearances, the barn mystery, and the old letter seemed like pieces of a dark puzzle, but one question still haunted him. What happened to the people who disappeared, and how is my father involved in this? Lucas knew the answers were close, but the sense of danger also grew with each step. As the days passed, Lucas began to realize that Clara knew more about Dark Farm than she let on. Every time he asked her direct questions about the locked barn or the disappearances mentioned by the workers, she deflected them with almost rehearsed skill. "It's not healthy to revisit the past, Mr. Mendoza," she said in that calm but unyielding tone. Her attitude, which had previously seemed professional, now sounded like a deliberate attempt to cover something up. One day, while Clara was busy organizing the farm's financial records, Lucas decided to search the small room where she lived. Although he felt he was crossing an ethical line, his determination to uncover the truth was greater. In a locked drawer, he found a small album of old photos. One of the images caught his eye. Clara, still a child, next to a man who appeared to be her father. On the back of the photo was an inscription, "At Dark Farm, before the shadows fell." The meaning of the phrase was nebulous, but it made it clear that Clara had a personal connection to the mysteries of the place. When Clara met Lucas later, he tried to act normal, but his distrust of her had intensified. "You've been here so long. Haven't you ever felt like the farm holds more than just land and cattle?" he asked carefully. Clara hesitated for a moment before answering. "Some stories belong in the soil, sir, and those who try to dig them up usually regret it." Lucas knew she was protecting something, but was it out of loyalty to the farm or for darker reasons? During another search of the main house, Lucas found something unexpected hidden in a double drawer in Arthur's old office. It was an aged envelope bearing the seal of a police department. Opening it, he found an incomplete report detailing a years-old investigation mentioning mysterious disappearances on the Sombria farm property. What caught Lucas's attention most was the name Arthur Mendoza listed as a party involved in the case, but the description ended abruptly, as if someone had interrupted the process. The few pages available included witness statements about screams coming from the locked barn and strange lights seen at night. One particularly alarming paragraph mentioned a key witness, whose identity had been kept confidential for security reasons, but who never came forward to give formal testimony. Lucas felt a chill at the extent of his father's influence. Did he do something to silence this witness? Or did she disappear like the others? Lucas showed Clara the report, expecting some reaction. Upon seeing it, she visibly paled, but tried to hide it. "This shouldn't be here," she muttered, before trying to convince Lucas to put it away again. "You're getting involved in something bigger than you realize." But Lucas couldn't back down any longer. The only question now echoing in his mind was, if my father knew all this, why did he send me here? That night, the silence of Dark Farm was interrupted by sounds that seemed to be coming from the locked barn. Lucas, already restless due to his recent discoveries, woke with a start to the sound of something metallic scraping against the floor. He looked out the window, but darkness enveloped the barn like an impenetrable veil. "Is it just my imagination?" he thought, before grabbing a flashlight and going out to investigate. The night air was chilly, and every footstep seemed to echo across the vast estate. As he approached the barn, the sound became clearer. Something or someone was inside. Lucas tried to peer through the small gaps in the boards, but all he could hear was low, steady breathing. He tried to open the padlock, but before he could continue, Clara suddenly appeared, holding a lantern. "What do you think you're doing?" she asked with a firmness Lucas hadn't seen before. "I heard something inside," he replied, but Clara quickly cut him off. "I told you, this area is dangerous. Go back to the house." The tension between them was palpable. As they walked back, Lucas couldn't ignore the fact that Clara seemed more nervous than ever. What was she protecting? He knew her explanation wasn't enough. Deep down, Lucas felt the answer to everything that was happening was locked away in that barn. But the question that kept him awake was, who or what is hiding inside? Tired of Clara's evasions and the constant feeling of being kept in the dark, Lucas decided he needed outside help. He hired Hugo Freitas, a private investigator known for his ability to unearth buried secrets. Hugo was a man of few words, but his reputation preceded him. "If there's something hidden on this farm, I'll find it," he said confidently as he pored over the police report and the records Lucas had accumulated. For the first time, Lucas felt he wasn't alone in this search. Hugo began his investigation of the locked barn, but discreetly. He observed Clara's patterns, noted the times workers circulated, and especially the moments when the barn was completely isolated. "This woman knows more than she's letting on," Hugo commented in one of his meetings with Lucas. "She's not just hiding something, she's protecting it with all her might." His words echoed in Lucas's thoughts, who began to question how far Clara was willing to go to keep the secret. As Hugo delved deeper into the farm's records, he discovered something disturbing. Clara wasn't just a manager. She had a family connection to the property, a connection that might explain her unwavering loyalty and evasive behavior. Lucas knew he was getting closer to the truth, but he couldn't shake the doubt. If Clara is protecting something, is it out of fear or complicity? Hugo, with his usual precision, presented Lucas with the results of his investigation. Clara Montero wasn't just a hired manager. She was the daughter of one of the farm's former workers, who mysteriously disappeared during the farm's hectic period. Her father was one of the first to question Arthur Mendoza's methods of managing the property, Hugo explained. And from what I've gathered, he disappeared soon after. For Lucas, the revelation completely changed the way he viewed Clara. Is she here for justice or revenge? When Lucas confronted Clara with the information, she didn't deny it. Instead, she revealed a story he wasn't prepared to hear. "My father knew things no one else did," she began, her voice firm but thick with emotion. "He tried to protect the workers here, but it put him at odds with your father. When he disappeared, my mother and I were expelled. I returned years later to make sure no one else suffered what he had." For the first time, Lucas saw Clara not as a reserved figure, but as someone deeply wounded but determined. The revelation brought more questions than answers. Lucas felt a wave of guilt and confusion as he thought about his father's role in the whole story. "If you knew all this, why didn't you tell me before?" he asked, trying to understand her motivations. Clara answered without hesitation, "Because I didn't know if you were like him, but now I see that you're searching for the truth, and maybe you're the only person who can fix what he destroyed." Her words awakened something in Lucas, but also left him with a question. What else is hidden on this farm that could change everything? After his conversation with Clara, Lucas began to sense that the truth was unfolding, but there were still missing pieces to the puzzle. He returned to the house's main office, determined to revisit every corner in search of something that could connect all the dots. It was then that, while moving a heavy bookcase, he discovered a safe hidden in the wall. Its ancient design and layer of dust indicated that it had not been used in years, or so it seemed. Lucas knew the contents of the safe could be crucial. With the help of Hugo, who improvised tools to break into the safe, Lucas finally opened it. Inside, he found meticulous financial records, contracts, and letters. The first few pages were routine transactions, but soon the documents began to reveal something more sinister. Records of illegal practices, such as forced labor and smuggling. Arthur Mendonza's name appeared in several of these documents, connecting him directly to the farm's shady operations. Among the papers, one letter stood out, addressed to someone identified only as the partner. The letter mentioned something called Solace Expansion, a plan that seemed to be the root of it all. As Lucas was reviewing the documents, Clara entered the room, visibly disturbed. He didn't hesitate to show her what he'd found. "Is this what you're protecting?" he asked, holding the papers out in front of her. Clara was silent for a moment before replying, "No, I'm protecting the people who still live with the burden of this." Her words echoed in Lucas's mind, but now he needed to understand. Who is this partner, and what was Solace's true purpose? Lucas, now in possession of the incriminating documents, felt a mixture of anger and confusion. He stared at Clara in the office, waiting for more direct answers. "You knew about this all along, didn't you?" he asked, holding up the letter that mentioned the partner. Clara kept her gaze fixed, but her expression revealed the weight she carried. "Yes, I knew," she replied calmly, "but I didn't know how or when to tell you. My goal was to protect the workers here, even if it meant keeping secrets." Clara's calm only fueled Lucas's frustration. "Protect the workers, or protect your father's memory?" he blurted out, without thinking. Clara finally lost her composure, her voice trembling with emotion. "You think this is about me? My father was silenced trying to save these people. He died for something greater than himself. You, Lucas, may not be responsible for this, but you have the power to right what your father did." The silence that followed was thick as Clara's words hung in the air. Lucas took a deep breath, trying to process everything. He knew Clara was right, but he also knew she was still hiding something. "You're right," he said, his tone calming. "But if we're going to fix this, I need to know everything. Who is the partner, and what is the Solace Expansion?" Clara hesitated, but answered with a sentence that left Lucas cold. "The partner isn't just someone. It's something that connects this farm to a crime much bigger than you can imagine." Clara's words echoed in Lucas's mind. The partner is not just someone. He didn't know what to expect, but that statement completely changed his perception. Along with Clara and Hugo, he began examining the documents in the safe more closely, looking for patterns or clues that connected the farm's illegal operations to something larger. It was then that they found a map folded between the pages of one of the records. The map detailed areas of the farm that seemed unexplored. One of them marked the locked barn as a central point. "This isn't just about the past," Hugo said, pointing to the map. "They use this place to move more than just forced labor. Look at these marked routes. They're direct connections to major cities and even ports." Clara confirmed, her tone somber. "My father used to say the farm was just the tip of the iceberg. He believed Arthur used it as a front for something much bigger." Lucas felt the weight of the revelation. His father wasn't just involved in crimes on the farm. He was part of a much wider network. As Lucas processed the information, he realized that his trip to the farm wasn't just to uncover secrets, but to eliminate them. Arthur knew the farm's secrets were at risk and had sent Lucas in the hope that he would unknowingly destroy any remaining evidence. "My own father used me," Lucas said, almost in a whisper. The question that now haunted him was inevitable. If Arthur is capable of manipulating even his own son, what else is he willing to do to protect himself? Lucas, Clara, and Hugo knew they couldn't act alone against someone with as much power as Arthur. They decided to lure the tycoon to the farm, where they could confront him directly and record his confessions. The plan was risky, but it was the only way to obtain the evidence needed to incriminate him. Lucas made the initial contact, calling his father and feigning interest in selling the property. "You always said the farm was more of a burden than an asset," he argued. Arthur hesitated for a moment, but Lucas's apparent tone of compliance convinced him. While awaiting Arthur's arrival, Hugo and Clara fine-tuned the details of the trap. Microphones were hidden in the main rooms of the house, while cameras would capture the entire interaction. Lucas, for his part, mentally prepared to confront his father. He knew Arthur wouldn't be easily fooled. "What if he realizes what we're doing?" he asked, visibly tense. Hugo calmly replied, "Then it'll be a question of who can maintain their composure the longest." When Arthur arrived, the air on the farm grew heavier. He entered with his usual authoritative presence, but Lucas noticed something different, a more attentive, almost suspicious look. "So, what's so important that you called me here?" he asked, looking around. Lucas knew the trap was set, but the question echoing in his mind was clear. Will I be able to stay calm enough to expose the truth without him noticing? Arthur sat in the main chair in the living room, analyzing Lucas's every move with calculating eyes. "Well, let's get straight to the point. You mentioned you were interested in selling the farm," he said, folding his hands in a gesture that seemed both casual and threatening. Lucas swallowed, trying to maintain his composure. "Yes," he began, his tone neutral. "But before we discuss numbers, I think we need to clarify a few things about what's really going on here." Arthur tilted his head, feigning surprise. "What are you insinuating, Lucas?" he asked, though it was obvious he already suspected what was coming. Lucas took one of the documents from the safe and placed it on the table, in plain sight. "That's what I'm insinuating," he said firmly. "You used this farm as a front for crimes that destroyed lives, and now you expect me to simply shut up and carry on the legacy." The silence that followed was sharp, until Arthur chuckled softly. "You don't understand anything, boy. All I did was protect this family." As Arthur continued to justify his actions, Lucas realized the crucial moment was approaching. With a slight movement, he signaled to Clara and Hugo, who were hidden, monitoring the conversation. "Protect? You destroyed lives to protect what? Your name? Your wealth?" Lucas pressed, forcing Arthur to lose his temper. "You think you can judge me? Everything you have was built by my hands." Arthur exploded, unaware that his words were being recorded. The question now looming large was, will this confession be enough to finally end Arthur Mendonza's empire? As Arthur continued his fiery speech, Lucas realized the moment he'd been waiting for had finally arrived. "You want to know what really happened here? I did what was necessary to keep everything under control," Arthur raged, unaware of the depth of his own words. The people who disappeared were threats, and this farm was the key to keeping the business running. Each sentence was like a puzzle piece falling into place, and the recordings captured it all perfectly. Clara entered the room, bringing with her a calm but firm presence. "Necessary? You destroyed families, including mine," she said, staring at Arthur with a determination that made the tycoon hesitate for the first time. Hugo followed close behind, carrying a tablet displaying the financial records and documents Lucas had found in the safe. "Arthur Mendonza," Hugo began, "your empire is about to crumble." Arthur's reaction was a mixture of disbelief and fury. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," he threatened, but his words now seemed hollow. Lucas, his heart racing, took the lead. "You used this farm and destroyed lives to protect your greed, but that ends now." Hugo activated the live feed of the records and confessions, sending everything to the authorities and media in real time. This was the final blow, and Arthur knew it. He retreated, finally realizing he was surrounded. But one last question lingered in Lucas's mind. What's left for a man like him now that his mask has completely slipped? With Arthur out of the picture and the evidence handed over to the authorities, Dark Farm experienced a silence that felt almost liberating. For the first time, the place seemed to breathe, free from the shadows of the past. Clara, who had previously carried the burden of protecting painful secrets, found an unexpected ally in Lucas. "I didn't imagine you were so different from your father," she admitted as they walked through the fields. Lucas smiled, but knew this difference wasn't just a matter of choice. It was a commitment he would need to honor. The idea of abandoning the farm crossed Lucas's mind, but Clara proposed something he hadn't expected. "This place doesn't have to be a monument to suffering," she said. "It can be a symbol of justice and renewal." We can turn it into a haven for those who need protection, just as my father tried to do." Lucas was silent for a moment, but the determination in Clara's eyes inspired him. He knew he had the resources, and now the motivation, to make that vision a reality. Together they began planning how the farm could be reinvented. Clara would be the manager, while Lucas would use his fortune to finance the transformation. "This place has carried secrets for too long," Lucas said. "It's time we let the truth grow here, just like the seeds we planted." But as they made plans, one last question echoed in Lucas's mind. Can we really erase the scars of the past or just learn to live with them? Lucas, who had previously seen himself as a distant heir to his family's legacy, now felt his life had gained a greater purpose. His time at Dark Farm had changed his perception of what truly mattered. The luxury and superficiality of life he knew in the big city seemed insignificant compared to the possibility of creating something genuine and meaningful. "I never knew what it was like to build something with my own hands," he confessed to Clara, as he oversaw the initial renovations to the farm. With each passing day, Lucas became more involved in the operations. He talked to the workers, learned about the farming processes, and committed himself to ensuring the farm was a safe and fair place. His fortune was now not just a status symbol, but a tool to right the wrongs of the past. Clara watched him with growing admiration. "You've found your place here," she said, in a rare moment of vulnerability. Lucas smiled, but knew the credit wasn't solely his. "You showed me the way," he replied. As Dark Farm began to flourish again, Lucas reflected on the journey that had led him there. Every obstacle, every painful revelation, and every difficult choice had shaped him in ways he could never have anticipated. But even with the sense of renewal, he knew that his father's impact and the farm's secrets would never be completely erased. The question that now drove him was, how do we ensure that the legacy we are creating here is stronger than the shadows that preceded it? As the sun set over Dark Farm, Clara and Lucas surveyed the fields, now filled with workers laughing and chatting as they finished their day. The air, once heavy with the secrets of the past, was now filled with a sense of hope. Lucas sighed, feeling the weight of recent events finally lift. "I never thought this place could be anything more than a dark memory," he said, looking at Clara. "But now I see that even shadows can give way to light." Clara, ever practical, replied with a restrained smile, "The shadows will never completely disappear, Lucas, but we can decide what to do with them." Her words lingered in his mind as he watched the first crops sprout again in the fields. Dark Farm was now not just a symbol of redemption, it was a place where lives could begin again. Lucas knew the path would still be challenging, but he finally understood the value of facing the truth, no matter how difficult. As they both prepared to enter the main house, Lucas asked Clara one last question, more to himself than to her. "Do you think we're ready for what comes next?" She looked at him, a gleam of confidence in her eyes. "Maybe not, but we've learned that as long as we face this together, we always will be." And with that, Dark Farm closed a chapter of pain and opened a new one of renewal, showing that even the darkest secrets can give way to a legacy of hope.